morning, everyone. It is 9:30, so good morning to you all, and welcome to Housing Community Development's Contract Compliance third quarter virtual technical assistance training for contractors. We are pleased to have you join us this morning and hope that you find these presentations very informative and beneficial. Before we begin, please use the chat box and let us know if you're experiencing any technical or audio or visual issues. We would like to also just review a few housekeeping items. All participants are asked to remain muted during the presentations, and please note that today's presentations will be recorded for training and informational purposes. My name is Lakeisha Tate. I am a staff analyst with the Housing Community Development Department, and I will be leading today's virtual technical assistance training just focused on the pre-award services. We sincerely appreciate your time and participation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them in the chat box and I will address them at the conclusion of my session. As I said, the recordings and the PowerPoint presentations, they will be made readily available on the Housing Community Development website and our YouTube channel within 7 business days from today. So this is our contact information. Laura Serrano now leads the DBRA at Section 3, MWSBE and Pay or Play for the Housing Community Development Real Estate Compliance Division. We have Crystal Boyce as the Compliance Manager who oversees and manages MWSBE and Pay or Play compliance for single-family professional services and our public service projects. We also have Michelle Perales, which is our Compliance Manager that managed DBRA Section 3, MWSBE Pay or Play compliance for our multifamily and our public facility initiatives. So as a staff analyst for the pre-award services, I am committed to compliance. I want to ensure that all representatives have a clear and comprehensive understanding of the applicable program rules and compliance expectations on housing community development projects. Should you have any questions or concerns regarding pre-award services compliance requirements, feel free at any time to contact me via email at lakeisha.tate@houstontx.gov, or you can pick up the phone and give me a call at 832-394-6345, and my contact information is available in the chat box. So some of you who may be less familiar with pre-award services, I'd like to briefly explain what pre-award services was established for and what it is entails. So it's just establishing this strong compliance foundation for contractors at the earliest stage of a project. I review solicitation language, ensure contract documents meet all applicable compliance standards, evaluate and approve required compliance documentation, such as your MWSB participation plans and pay or play documents, and that this just ensures that the project performance and significantly reduces any compliance-related risks on the housing community development projects. So I will serve as the primary point of contact for developers, prime contractors, general contractors, and any designated compliance consultant, just ensuring that the compliance is proactive, progressive, and continuous. This ensures that all parties clearly understand the program requirements and that you're fully prepared to implement them prior to the commencement of work. So what are the benefits of pre-award services? Pre-award services, I'm validating the program requirements. So I'm ensuring that the selected contractors understand and that you can comply with the MWSBE participation goals, Section 3 requirements, Davis-Bacon related acts, your federal contract provisions, pay or play requirements, general requirements, and reporting and monitoring obligations. I will help improve contract execution readiness. So I'm going to ensure that all your required documents are collected and they're reviewed prior to the commencement of work. And I'll verify that all the applicable requirements, language, documentation is incorporated into the construction contracts to reduce any delays once you execute your contract and the project starts. Just clarify expectations with the owner developers, the prime and the general contractor, as well as your designated compliance consultants. So once you are awarded funding, You will receive a notification of your award. The contracting party will receive formal communication outlining your compliance expectations related to DBRA, MWSBE, Section 3, as well as Play or Play. In addition, I will facilitate an informational meeting with the contracting parties to review the program rules, responsibilities, and compliance requirements specific to the pre-award. Confirming your cost reasonableness. So I will review and request like a scope of work, cost allocations, engineering cost estimate, detailing the use of the funds to ensure a transparent breakdown of the project expenditures. I will review to ensure that all project activities align with applicable compliance requirements, such as the DBRA, MWSBE, Section 3, and Pay or Play. Also, pre-awards reduces compliance risk. So pre-award services provide significant value by we're offer the contracting party clear and comprehensive guidance on the program requirements, and therefore we're reducing the risk of project delays and ensuring compliance from the outset of the project. In the following slides, I will provide an overview of the general requirements that Housing Community Development will enforce to ensure compliance with applicable program requirements. So as it relates to general requirements, we have a pre-award debarment verification requirements. So state and federal debarment verifications is required before a contract can be awarded. These requirements apply to all entities involved in the project, and this is including your professional service providers, architect, engineers, nonprofit organizations, your prime contractors, subcontractors, and any lower tier subcontractors that are hired to perform work under the contract. Now, for any multi-year contracts, this is not just a one-time review. An annual state and federal debarment verification must be completed throughout the life of your contract to ensure all participating entities remain eligible. Another important requirement is our SAMS registration. So the prime contractor must have an active SAMS registration before a contract can be awarded. An inactive or expired registration can delay the contract award until it has been renewed. In addition, all your subcontractors, lower tier subcontractors must obtain a UEI, which is referenced to as a UEI number. So this UEI number actually replaced the DUNS number. So you want to make sure you avoid any delays. We recommend that contractors verify their SAMS registration is active and confirm that all of your subcontractors, suppliers, service providers have obtained a UEI number before you execute a contract and work begins. So another general requirement will be our conflict of interest requirements. Because your project is funded through the Housing Community Development with federal funding, all contractors must comply with both Housing Community Development Contract of Interest Policy as well as the federal regulations. So under these requirements, covered persons may not receive financial interest or benefit from a housing community funded contract, subcontract, or agreement for themselves or for someone with whom they have an immediate family or business relationship. So this requirement is going to apply while the individual is serving in the role and if the individual continues for 1 year after their service has ended. So who is considered a covered person? Your covered persons will include any city employees, our consultants, agents, officers, elected and appointed officials, as well as program participants and subrecipients who are involved with city managed funding. So the definition for a covered person also extends to your immediate family members. These are members of the same household and individuals or businesses that have a financial or business relationship with a covered person. As part of the pre-award requirements, the prime contractor, all subcontractors, and lower tier subcontractors are required to complete and submit a conflict of interest certification forms. This allows Housing Community Development to review potential conflicts before contract is awarded. And for our multi-year contracts, this is not just a one-time requirement, but this is an annual conflict of interest review and certification must be completed to ensure there has not been any changes that could create a conflict during the life of the contract. So if any point a contractor becomes aware of an actual or potential or perceived conflict of interest, it should be disclosed to the city immediately and therefore we can review it and resolve it before it affects the project or the contract. So during this portion of the pre-award presentation, I will outline the required pre-award documents that must be submitted on behalf of the developer and or general or prime contractor prior to the commencement of work of any project activities. So please note that a policy change has been implemented under the City of Houston's MWSBE program, and I'll just go over some of the effective MWSBE program updates. So now MWBE prime contractors may self-perform up to 50% of the total contract goal, and actually this policy was made effective as of January 2022, but effective as of February 2026. Any NOFA, RFP, RFQ, ITB, or any other city solicitation advertised on or after February 2026, this date, and you must comply with the updated MWSBE policy. So now the construction contracts will have a SBE goal. The 4% cap on SBE participation has been removed, and bidders may count participation from other local certified firms, PDBE, VOSB, DVSOB, and LGBTQ up to 4% toward your MBE and or WBE goals. There's actually a Hispanic American MBE participation capped at 16%. So not more than 16% can be utilized for Hispanic American towards your MBE participation. So as it relates to any new solicitations, will include the revised policy change, but any existing contracts or solicitations advertised before February 2026 will continue under the previous policy and not be affected by the new updates. Now, as it relates to MWBE prime contractors, you are permitted to meet the MWBE goals by self-perform up to 50% of the total contract goal. That means the prime participation credit is limited to the lesser or the proposed participation of the approved goal. As I said, this new policy took effect January 2022, and it serves to assist MWBE primes to build their capacity while not losing focus on ensuring MWBE subcontractor participations on city contracts. So, Housing Community Development collaborated with the Office of Business Opportunity, and which they administers the MWSBE program. So we established categorical goals for the housing community development projects on similar contracts with our multifamily, public facility, and single family program areas. These categorical goals was incorporated in previously issued NOFAs and solicitations, and they was only applied to construction related activities with those programs. But effective as of February the 15th, 2026, the housing community development, we were no longer able to use these categorical goals, and now we must conduct a contract specific analysis for each award to obtain an improved MWBE goal from the Office of Business Opportunity. So therefore, any new procurements advertised after February the 15th, 2026, the MWSBE goal may differ from previously established categorical goals as the ones that's listed on this particular slide. So if your project is subject to MWSBE goal requirements, pre-award services will require the developer, prime contractor, and or your general contractor to complete and submit a compliant MWSB participation plan along with signed letters of intent to my attention for review and approval. So you must complete the 470, which is the MWSB participation plan. And if that 470 meet the established MWSBE goals, then you'll submit the 470 along with your letters of intent. If your MWSB participation plan fails to demonstrate meeting the established goals, or you have acceptable good faith efforts, then I'm looking for you to submit 3 forms: document 470, 471, and 472. You want to ensure that only firms certified through the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity can be used towards your goal achievement on your MWSB participation plan. So this is how you can achieve your MWSBE goals. You want to make sure that as an MWBE prime, you're only counting self-performing. If you're self-performing up to 50% of that total advertised goal for only work that you perform a commercial useful function in. You want to make sure that as a MWBE Prime and you're self-performing, that you cannot use your certification to meet multiple goals. So you have to either identify and indicate if you're going to self-perform as an MBE or a WBE. You want to make sure that other local certified firms may only count up to 4% towards your MBE and or WBE goals. And the local firms is the Persons with Disability Business Enterprise, known as PDBE, your Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise, known as VSOB, or your Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, known as DVOSB, or the LGBTQ Enterprise. Want to keep in mind that the Hispanic American MBE participation is capped at that 16%. Also, another big thing when achieving your goal is second tier, third tier, etc. Non-certified subcontractors or suppliers do not count toward your goal. So once a firm is certified as an MWBE firm, that total dollar value of that subcontract awarded to the MWSBE firm is counted toward your contract goals, counting only the work in which that MWSBE has performed a commercial useful function. Credit for work subcontract by a gold credit MWBE firm to a non-certified firm will not count toward your MWSBE goal. So make sure that when you're identifying and you're listing certified MWSBE firms, if they are subbing out to lower tier non-certified subcontractors and suppliers, those dollars paid to those non-certified firms under that certified firm will not count towards your goal. So one MWSBE firm cannot meet multiple contract goals unless OBO allows it, and I haven't seen that happen this far. So only City of Houston certified firms performing a commercial useful function receives gold credit. So you want to visit the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity website at www.houstonTX.gov/OBO and click on the directory link, and you can search it and verify your City of Houston vendors are actually certified. When you submit your MWSB participation plan and your letters of intent, make sure that they're signed and dated. And like I said, if your goals are met, you only submit the document 470 along with the letters of intent. And if you're unable to meet the established goals, then you'll be submitting 470, 471, and 472. And any incomplete submissions can be deemed as non-responsive. So due to the City of Houston's MWSBE program updates, Form 470 has been revised, and the city now uses one standardized MWSB participation form, which is document 470, and it's for all contract types. So this includes construction, professional services, goods, and any non-professional services. It's only one participation plan now. So your document 470, it allows the contractor commitment toward the participation toward their goals. So you're going to document how you're going to meet your MWSBE goals. It allows me, the pre-award staff analyst, to assess whether the contractor has a realistic plan to meet the MBE, WBE, and SBE goals, right? So the contractor must submit the document 470, along with your signed letters of intent to the pre-award staff analyst in all sections. You want to make sure they're fully completed, accurate, and signed. Next, we have document 470, which has been renamed from the pre-bid good faith efforts to the good faith effort outreach. And this form just requires a contractor that does not meet the advertised MWSBE goal is going to allow you to document the good faith efforts. So the good faith efforts will be any efforts made to engage with your MWSBE firms, and it allows the administrative department, which is the Office of Business Opportunity, to evaluate any good faith efforts. So when you're documenting your good faith efforts, you want to just ensure that all of your outreach information is complete. You want to make sure these NAICS codes, certification types, certified firms, contact information, the method of how you reach out to them, Contact dates, responses, and results, along with any supporting documentation, can be attached to this form. And you're also welcome to include an Excel spreadsheet if you don't want to fill out this form. And make sure that spreadsheet includes all of the emails and any other evidence of your outreach efforts. You just want to make sure that the whole form is completed entirely. The bottom portion has your signature, date, phone, a contact email, and the name of the company. You want to make sure this information is mandatory, as the administrating department, which is the Office of Business Opportunity, will verify all good faith efforts submitted on this form or any Excel form or any supporting documentation. They will verify all of those good faith efforts. And the third document is document 472, and it's been renamed as well, from the contractor deviation goal request to the bidder's MWSBE good faith efforts justification goal request. So this form must be fully completed if the contractor's MWSB participation plan does not meet the advertised goal. It's going to allow the contractor to provide the department approved contract goals and the bidder proposed participation goals. It's going to allow the contractor to explain under the justification part, explain why the advertised MWBE goals were not met, and then a separate explanation on your company letterhead can be attached because it may not be enough room for you to provide a full justification. And then additional good faith efforts, you're just going to describe any efforts not included in the document 470 and then provide supporting documentation demonstrating compliance with the City of Houston's good faith effort policy. You want to make sure this form is completed entirely, date, company name, email, phone number, and title. Next, we're going to go into the MWSBE letter of intent. The letter of intent must be submitted along with your MWSB participation plan and must be fully completed. So the key requirements that I'm looking for on your MWSBE letter of intent is that for you to have a bid amount. The bid amount should reflect the direct construction amount from the City of Houston funding awarded to you. And then you want to include an estimated amount that the GC intends to utilize for that certified subcontractor or supplier, or I typically like to see the percentage listed on the participation plan indicated on the letter of intent. You want to make sure that this letter of intent is signed by the general contractor as well as that certified MWSBE subcontractor or supplier. You want to make sure all the information provided on this form is accurate for it to be deemed responsive. Next, I'll get into what am I looking for when I'm assessing the MWSBE participation plan. What I'm looking for is during my review, I'm verifying that the contractor have submitted the 470 along with the letters of intent for each certified subcontractor or supplier. I want to make sure that firms are currently certified through the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity. Firms are certified for the services listed in performing a commercial useful function, making sure that your NAICS codes match the work description that certified firm is listed for in the online certified directory. I want to make sure that the percentages are accurate. So the same percentage that you list on the participation plan should be the same percentages that you're listing on the letter of intent. I'm looking for the MBE, the WBE, and the SBE are separate individual goals and that they are met. And then your participation plan should be signed and dated and that is demonstrate meeting the MWSBE goals. And then the prime contractor, you want to make sure you complete all your fields and sign the documents, and all the required documents must be submitted and the plan must demonstrate meeting the minimum goal requirements. And I stress minimum because if you submit a participation plan and you exceed the individual goal or the overall goal, if that plan is approved, you will be required to adhere to all percentages and approved goals on that participation plan. My standard processing time in reviewing a participation plan is 7 to 10 business days. And this is once all pre-award documents are submitted to the HCD pre-award at houstontx.gov. And that's our designated email for pre-award. Now, when I'm assessing your participation plan, if a plan is responsive, meaning it meets all of the MWEE program requirements, then all parties will receive an email saying that I recommend the scheduling of the pre-construction meeting and proceeding with any project activities. Now, if you have an MWSBE participation plan that fails to demonstrate meeting the MWBE goals, or you have good faith efforts or whatever, those plans, you will receive an email letting you know that the MW participation plan is deemed non-responsive, and then you're not allowed to revise a participation plan with pre-award. So at that time, I will send your 470, your 471, and 472 over to the Office of Business Opportunity to evaluate your non-responsive plan, or to evaluate any acceptable good faith efforts and supporting documentation you've submitted with the package. Now, the Office of Business Opportunity processing time is 7 to 10 business days as well. But if they have to ask for any additional information, that timeline could actually restart. And pre-award services, I'm not involved in evaluation of non-responsive plans. As I said, OBO will review it, any non-responsive plans and good faith efforts, and they will provide a final recommendation directly to the contractor and the pre-award services. So pre-award documents must be approved before I can recommend a pre-construction meeting or any notice to proceed can be issued. So next, we're going to review the pre-award pay-or-play requirements for housing community development projects that are subject to pay-or-play. So the City of Houston pay-or-play program is established and governed under the City of Houston Executive Order 1 through 7. And the primary purpose of the City of Houston's pay-or-play program was to create the playing field during the bid process for vendors, as the cost of providing insurance or failure to provide insurance to employees may influence the bids submitted by vendors for city work. So the pay-or-play program is administered by the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity, and this program is going to mandate that contractors provide employees a minimal level of health care benefits, or to contribute a designated amount to the Contractor Responsibility Fund. And the Contractor Responsibility Fund is used to support the Crisis Call Diversion Program and the Client Access Program, which are preventative and mental health care related services that they provide to uninsured persons in the Houston area. So the pay-or-play pre-award required documents is the POP 1, which is the pay-or-play acknowledgement form. Then we have the POP 2, which is the certification of compliance with pay-or-play. And then we have the POP 3, is the list of subcontractors participating in the pay-or-play program. And then we have the B2G access form. So all POP pre-award documents must be submitted for review and approval before I can recommend any project activities such as the pre-construction or kickoff meeting or any notice to proceed. So we'll take a look at the form POP 1, which is the pay-or-play acknowledgement form, and the contractor will just acknowledge the pay-or-play program and agrees to comply if you were the selected awardee or you was awarded a contract. This form must be completed and submitted along with all other pre-award documents, and all fields must be completed, but except for the solicitation number, which is not required. And if you have a city vendor number, you can please provide it. Otherwise, you can indicate NA, and that'll be appropriate. Next, we have the POP 2, certification of compliance. So the contractor must complete and submit the POP 2 with the pre-award documents. Ensure that all fields for the prime contractor are completed with your name, address. The outline agreement will be your contract number, starting with the 46 and 3 zeros will follow it. You want to put the project name, and then the contracting department should be the Housing Community Development, which you can note as HCD. So the contractor is going to select how will you participate in the pay-or-play program. Will you pay, play, or both? So pay means you will pay $1 per hour for each covered employee working on the contract, including subcontractor employees as well for your subcontractors. And then play will be a contractor provides healthcare benefits to covered employees, and you will provide acceptable proof to Housing Community Development. Now, the both option will be if you want to pay for some employees and provide healthcare benefits for others. You want to just ensure that all fields under the prime contractor column are completed. You want to make sure your covered employees is the 18 and older, work at least 30 hours for that employee or any time on a city contract. Non-covered employees working under 30 hours for that employee per week. Exempt employees will be under 18, covered by insurance with a spouse, such as Medicaid or Medicare, or they decline coverage, but when offered, it meets the City of Houston 75-25 standards, and you'll be required to provide proof. Make sure you sign and date the form before submission. The next form is the list of subcontractors. So this form is completed by the prime contractors. It must include all contractors, subcontractors, consultants, service providers, vendors, suppliers intended for the use of the project. You want to list them. Regardless of their certification type, the scope of work, or contract amount, you want to make sure that you list them on the POP3. Next, we have our B2G access form. So the contractor is required to complete the B2G access form in entire, and this form is just providing access to the system for the designated POP compliance staff from your team. DBRA requirements will be addressed briefly in the context of pre-award documents. We'll talk about the prevailing wages. So for projects subject to DBRA requirements, depending on the funding source, a competitive procurement for a general contractor may be required, and in such cases, prevailing wages rates are issued before the pre-bid meeting. These rates are locked in by the bid opening date and subject to execution of a general construction contract. So if the contract is not awarded within 90 days of the bid opening, any modification to the wage determination must be included in the contract. Exceptions do apply when extra time is granted to finish the original work, or when added work is merely incidental to the work. So we have the general wage determination form. So to determine the appropriate prevailing wages for your project, a general wage determination form must be submitted along with your detailed construction cost estimate. And then the general wage request will be obtained prior to the scheduling of the pre-bid or pre-construction meeting. Additionally, you want to confirm that the applicable wage rates in the federal regulation compliance packet are included in both the bidding and the contract documents as the minimum requirements before proceeding. So we'll just talk about DBRA meetings. So if you're going to competitively procure a contract, then a pre-bid meeting is definitely required. And this is just an opportunity to present bidding contractors with an overview of the applicable prevailing wage rates and the related compliance requirements. Now, for the pre-construction meeting, per 29 CFR Part 5, a pre-construction conference must be conducted prior to commencement of any construction work. Then there will be an onboarding meeting. So before construction begins, the designated contract administrator will complete a required onboarding training session with the general contractor and designated compliance staff to discuss any of the compliance requirements. This section, I will provide an overview of the updated Section 3 requirements and related program changes. No pre-award Section 3 documentation is required during the pre-award phase. So the purpose of the Section 3 program is to ensure that economic opportunities, most importantly employment, generated by HUD financial assistance shall be directed to low and very low income persons, particularly those who are recipients of the government assistance for housing or residents of the community in which the federal assistance is being spent. So effective March 16, 2026, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, has increased the monetary threshold for Section 3 projects receiving housing community financial assistance from a $200,000 threshold to a $300,000 threshold. Housing Community Development Section 3 policy has been updated as of April 2026 to align with the Section 3 updates. So the Section 3 projects cover projects will be any housing rehabilitation, housing construction, and any other public construction projects assisted with HUD programs that provide housing and community development financial assistance. So when that total amount of assistance to that project meets or exceeds $300,000 of the housing community development financial assistance, is considered a Section 3 covered project. And Section 3 requirements will apply to the entire project, regardless of whether the project is fully or partially funded under the HUD program. So once you meet or exceed the $300,000 threshold, Section 3 applies to the overall project. Not just the prime contract, but the Section 3 applies to the prime contractor, all subcontractors, including lower tier subs involved on the project. So contractors and subcontractors are encouraged to make good faith efforts to provide employment, training, and contracting opportunities to Section 3 workers, target workers, and Section 3 businesses. So as a project starts, there will be a Section 3 25% benchmark goal requirement. So this chart is showing the Section 3 labor hour benchmarks for contractors and subcontractors participating on the Section 3 covered project. HUD goal is for 25% of all labor hours worked on a covered project is to be performed by Section 3 workers, and of that total, 5% of all labor hours should be performed by targeted Section 3 workers, who are Section 3 workers living in that project service area or neighborhood. These benchmark goals are used to measure compliance and create economic opportunities by connecting HUD federal funds with eligible workers and businesses in the communities where the projects are located. So projects subject to Section 3 requirements will require Section 3 reporting throughout the duration of the project. And this will require recipients to report the following data on an annual basis to HUD on all projects completed with the reporting year in a manner consistent with reporting requirements for applicable HUD requirements. So the Section 3 labor hours report applies to the entire project. The report must indicate the labor hours must include all hours worked by employees for the prime contractor, subcontractor, and lower tier subcontractors performing work on the project. And then contractors are responsible for ensuring that all subcontractors, lower tiers provide the required labor hours information to support accurate reporting and compliance throughout the duration of the project. Now, HCD accepts certifications issued by other governmental or quasi-governmental agencies. This is including your local city, county, and any state housing authorities. We also allow self-certification for the Section 3 businesses and Section 3 workers and target workers. So the certification forms and any additional information can be downloaded from Housing Community Development website. So if you have any questions or you need further assistance, you may contact the Section 3 team at the HCD Section 3 at houstontx.gov. And you also can visit our official City of Houston Housing Development Department Section 3 page for more details. We do encourage Section 3 participation early on. So obtaining a Section 3 worker and Section 3 business concern certifications and will help you meet your Section 3 benchmark goals, and this should start at the early phase. So ensure that any potential Section 3 workers and business are informed about available certification opportunities early on before project activity starts. So next, our office has introduced a contract compliance acknowledgement form that must be submitted alongside the necessary pre-award documents for any recommendations for proceeding with pre-construction or pre-related meetings and activities. And this document is just an act confirmation that the contracting party's obligation to adhere to the applicable program requirements. So before recommending to proceed with project activities, the contract acknowledgement form will serve as affirmation of the contracting party responsibility to ensure compliance with program requirements. As a general contractor, the owner developer, the general contractor, or prime contractor, you will acknowledge your responsibility to ensure compliance with program requirements. So first on the form is compliance requirements as it relates to the UEI compliance requirements. So as far as UEI, all entities receiving federal funds must be identified by a UEI, and you can obtain that through the SAMS.gov, which I said the UEI replaced the DUNS number. To clarify, this is not a new federal requirement, but rather an existing requirement that now must be consistently documented and enforced as part of housing community development compliance process. So the federal requirements, you can refer to 2 CFR Part 25 that a sub-award cannot be issued without a UEI. So for prime contractors, you want to make sure that you have an active SAMS.gov registration and a valid UIE prior to contract award. And then for all of your subcontractors, suppliers, vendors, consultants, you want to make sure that they obtain and provide a UEI number prior to any subcontract award. In the prime contractor, you cannot execute a subcontract without confirming and making sure that your subcontractors obtain a UEI number. Next, we have the certified firms and payments. So payments count toward participation goals only when the certified firms, only made to the certified firms. So the credit applies only to firms properly added to the project after certification. So best practices is that for the general prime contractor to maintain full awareness of all firms working on your project. If a certified subcontractor or supplier utilize non-certified firms, the general prime contractor will receive credit only for payments made to the certified firm. So no MWSB participation credit will be given for payments made by that firm to non-certified subcontractors or suppliers. Additionally, if you have a certified subcontractor or supplier working on your project that was not included in the initial approved MWSB participation plan, you will not receive participation credit toward your goal unless a deviation request is submitted and approved. And then once that deviation request is approved, credit will only be applied from the date of the approval moving forward. It is important to note that if you intend to add firms for gold credit that were not included in your initial MWSB participation plan, you must submit a deviation request prior to making any payments. Otherwise, participation credit will only apply to payments made after the deviation request has been approved. Next, on the form, we'll talk about the non-compliance. So failure to comply may result in payment withholding, project termination, or suspension from housing community development projects. So please ensure that everyone working on the project is aware of the compliance expectations and the requirements for all applicable programs, as this may impact the release of payment draws. It is important that upon receiving compliance status reports that you ensure that both you and the contractor and all firms listed on the CSR report submit the required documentation, resolve any non-compliant items in a timely manner, and just maintain your open lines of communication with your designated contract administrators. We also offer technical assistance training like today and other training opportunities. So therefore, there shouldn't be no reason for a project to remain in a non-substantial or non-compliant status. So we'll talk about mandatory participation. For your firms listed in the initial MWSB participation plan and performing work on the project, we do require them to at least attend one technical assistance training. And then they also should be encouraged to attend the pre-construction or any kickoff meetings. It will be mandatory for all parties working on your project to attend one technical assistance training throughout the duration of the project. So we strongly encourage your subcontractors, suppliers, service providers, consultant to attend these technical assistance trainings, as they are typically the parties who encounter compliance issues and challenges during the course of the project. Then for a closeout evaluation, there will be a closeout evaluation for your MWSBE and Paraplay. So to receive a satisfactory project rating for MWSBE, all participation goals must be met or supported by good faith efforts. And then the form also just have the policy acknowledgement. So you acknowledge that you understand compliance with the City of Houston's Pay or Play Executive Order 1 through 7, the City of Houston's MWSBE policy, as well as the City of Houston's Good Faith Effort policy. So the owner developer, the general contractor, will complete and date the acknowledgement form and then submit it to me with all of your other required pre-award documents. Next, we have the pre-award UEI collection form. So just to clarify, this is not a new federal requirement, but this has been an existing requirement, and that we're definitely enforcing it, and we're making sure we're obtaining this form to make sure the UEI numbers have been attained and they're provided to the office. So the pre-award UEI collection form is going to capture the UEI information for the prime contractor and all anticipated subcontractors, suppliers, etc. prior to contract execution. So it includes the certification that the prime contractor has verified the accuracy of all the UEI numbers for all participants. It requires that any additional contractors identify post-award that you're going to obtain a UEI number prior to allowing anyone to perform work on the project. The anticipated contractor, you're going to list all your subcontractors, vendors, suppliers, service providers, consultants, and all other participating entities. At a minimum, during the pre-award, I am looking for you to include the prime contractor's UEI number and at least all of your certified firms listed for gold credit from your participation plan. You should have a UEI number listed on this form. Make sure that you complete the form entirely, including the authorized representative name, signature date on the form. So next, we're going to talk about the required compliance language. So if you're competitively bidding on a project before advertising for a general contractor or initiating any type of contract and solicitation, you want to make sure that the solicitation content and all attachments must be submitted to me for review so that I can ensure that the applicable program requirements and language is incorporated. I am happy to review any solicitations for a general contractor or subcontractor, especially if a solicitation does not require a competitively bid. I'll review it. I will ensure that you are using the most current compliance language and that all required documents and attachments are included in your solicitations. So this is just a copy of what the solicitation language looks like. An example, if you're going to solicit it for a general contractor, there is standard compliance language as it relates to MWSBE as well as pay or play. You want to make sure that your solicitation reference and includes an updated copy of the City of Houston's MWSBE program requirements and good faith efforts if your project is applicable to MWSBE or pay or play requirements. Now for the construction contract language, MWSBE and POP requirements, we do require standard language that must be incorporated into your construction contracts between the owner developer, the prime contractor, and the subprime. So these requirements should be included and applicable in the contract documents to ensure compliance with program guidelines and contractual obligations. I will not read this verbatim, but this is just the standard MWSB compliance language that is required and provided to all parties upon notification that you have been selected as the awardee of the funding or the awarded contractor. And then standard MWSB compliant language must be incorporated into a construction agreement between the owner developer, prime contractor, and general contractor subprime. The most critical component is ensuring that the established MWSBE goal and the corresponding breakdown of the goal are clearly identified and included within the contract documents. Including this information ensures that all parties understand their MWSBE participation obligations and that the compliance requirements are properly communicated throughout the contract documents. Now, this is the information for the language for the City of Houston's pay or play program. So you want to make sure this standard language is included in your construction contract. So next we'll talk about the compliance documents for the contracts. So the owner developer contractor and prime contractor contracts must reference and include the following documents regarding local, state, and federal compliance requirements. So if your project is applicable to DBRA, you want to make sure that that DBRA general wage is included. And then for your federal regulations compliance packet, this does include the HUD 4010, and it also includes the Section 3 clause as well. So you want to make sure that's referenced and included. Now we do have the Housing Community Development Contract Compliance Form packet. It's not required, but it is encouraged to reference and include it in your construction contract. If your project is subject to MWSBE requirements, you want to make sure that the City of Houston's MWSBE program requirements, known as Document 808, is referenced and included in your construction contract. And then you want to make sure your City of Houston Good Faith Efforts policy. And you also want to make sure that the SAMS exclusion certification records for all parties, this is the owner, developer, the prime contractor, and the subprime, is referenced and included in that construction contract as well. You are required to provide a draft copy of your construction contract to my attention so I can review it and approve it, just to make sure that all of your compliance language and the required documents are referenced and included in your construction contract before you execute them. Next, we'll talk about the pre-award compliance red flags. So some of the red flags that I have noticed is that the signed letters of intent are not submitted with a participation plan. Failure to have the MWSBE firm sign the MWSBE letters of intent. Listing firms on your participation plan that do not have an active certification with the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity. So you want to make sure you review that OBO online directory to validate and confirm that that certified subcontractor and supplier is actually certified with the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity. You want to make sure that contractors provided an MWB participation plan that exceeds the minimum goal requirements. As I stated before, you want to make sure that your participation plan is meeting the minimum goal requirements. If your participation plan exceeds, you will be required to adhere to the individual goals if you exceed it, or the overall goal if you exceed it. You'll be required to adhere to it once your participation plan has been approved. Listing MWSBE firms for gold credit without notification. The UEI and the POP forms, not including all subcontractors, consultants, service providers, vendors, and suppliers that you plan on utilizing regardless of the certification status, scope of work, or amount. You want to, the construction contract, not including your applicable program requirements and language and documents. Additionally, the agreement needs to be signed and dated. That's another red flag by all parties. And then failure to submit the pre-award documents for review and approved in a timely manner. So for instance, if you know you have an estimated construction start time, just make sure that you submit these pre-award documents so they can be reviewed and approved in a timely manner, and that if any documents has to be forwarded over to the Office of Business Opportunity, that you align time for review and evaluation of those documents so we can meet that estimated construction start time. So we have frequently answered questions. When are pre-award documents required to be submitted? So you want to make sure that these documents are submitted in a timely manner, and they have to be submitted and approved before a pre-construction meeting, a kickoff meeting, or a notice to proceed can be recommended. Who do we submit the pre-award documents to? So you want to submit the pre-award documents to the designated email, which is hcdpreaward@houstontx.gov. What are the next steps following the submission of the pre-award? So as a staff analyst, I will review the documents for completion and compliance, and before a recommendation to proceed based on the responses of the required documents. So if the MWSB participation plan is deemed non-responsive, what is the next step? Your participation plan is forwarded over to the Office of Business Opportunity to review it. A non-responsive plan, possibly cure your plan, and evaluate your good faith efforts. And like I said, it's a 7 to 10 business days review with the Office of Business Opportunity on non-responsive plans. Once OBO make a final determination regarding your non-responsive plan or good faith efforts, they'll notify the contractor and pre-award, and then we can identify what is the next steps. How are pre-award good faith efforts evaluated? So the Office of Business Opportunity evaluates MWSB participation plan, and it's based on a case-by-case, and it's determined if the contractor complied with the City of Houston good faith efforts. So you want to make sure that you review the City of Houston's good faith efforts policy and make sure you're familiar and updated with the information in the policy. So to help, so before a notice to proceed is issued or the pre-construction meeting or a kickoff meeting is scheduled, you want to make sure all of your preliminary documentation is submitted to me for review and approval at that designated email address. So to help ensure that you are familiar with the City of Houston's MWSBE and Pay or Play requirements, please review the resources link on this slide. The materials provide an overview of the applicable compliance requirements, policies, and expectations for contractors doing business with the City of Houston. You have your Chapter 15 Code of Ordinance, Part 5 that covers the MWSBE program. You have the City of Houston's program requirements and policies. You also have the City of Houston's Good Faith Efforts policy, and you have the City of Houston Executive Order 1 through 7 link for you to review. These resources are intended to help your contractors, the developers, your consultants, subcontractors understand their compliance responsibilities before the contract award and through the life of the project. So we definitely encourage all project participants to review these materials and become familiar with the applicable requirements to support successful project implementation and ongoing compliance. At this time, do you have any questions or comments? Yes, the presentation and the PowerPoint will be readily made available on Housing Community website. So if you've already executed, say, can the compliance requirements be added to the contracts by addendum or have to be incorporated into the contract body? No. So if the project is applicable to MWSBE and Pay or Play, if it's not added in the body, you can do an addendum that says MWSBE and Pay or Play, City of Houston, MWSBE and Pay or Play, and you can add that language that requires standard language as an addendum. That's fine.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, well, this concludes the pre-award service presentation. We appreciate your presentation. We appreciate your participation in today's virtual technical assistance training. And to help us improve on future services, we do invite you to provide feedback. So there will be a survey link provided to all the registered attendees following the technical assistance trainings today. And like I said, the recording and PowerPoint presentation for each presentation will be available on HCD's website and our YouTube channel. And we're looking to have that available for you guys within 7 business days. So following this session, we have Andreas Magoza, who will lead the MWSBE Virtual Technical Assistance Training, which will begin at 10:30. And I'd like to thank you, and you hope you find the next presentation informative and engaging. Thank you so much.